Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. In today's video, I'm making what was initially a mailbox inspired treat box. I've only made one of these, so you will see various things change along the way, and I'll point those out in a minute. I've used a simple strap closure. The lid pulls back like so, and you can access the treats inside. And then in this front section, I have secured a small pocket which encloses the gift card. I have created a divider because I wanted a separate way of accessing the treats. If you're happy for your treats to be accessed through the front here, you can of course make this as a closed box and all access is through this piece. You will note through the video that I took away this top corner as a means to get the door open, but when I came to make the final closure, you can actually use this bar here to open the door, so this piece wasn't actually necessary. You'll also see in the video that I started with a different closure type, which I then changed towards the end, and you'll also note that throughout the video, this front lid section here, there's a bigger gap between this top edge and the back of the box. If you use the measurements that I give you in the video, rather than what you see in the video, you'll end up with a lid which fits much more snugly like so, rather than the gap that you will see. So there are a few changes along the way, but as I'm sure you can appreciate, if I'm only making one project, I then find that things don't quite work in the way that I want them to. Having said that, it has turned into a lovely box. I'm happy with how this one has come out. So let me show you how I put it together. For a box the same size as mine, your starting cardstock will be 10 inches by 6 7/8, not the measurement that you see on the screen, as I mentioned at the beginning. Along the 10-inch side, score at 1/2 inch, 1 3/4 of an inch, 5 1/4 inches, and 6 1/2 inches. Rotate. And on the short side, score at 1 1/8 and 5 5/8. We're now going to put the markings for our door on, and we're going to do that on the reverse. But when we cut the door, we want to make sure the pattern paper is on the front. So you can either add the pattern paper now and then do the marking and the cutting of the door, or do the marking of the door, add the pattern paper and then cut. My pattern paper for this section is going to be 3 1/4 inches by 4 1/4 inches, and I'm going to add that in now. And the key thing is just when we come to cut through the cardstock and the pattern paper, just make sure that your glue is completely dry. Otherwise, sometimes it does have a tendency to rip and tear, particularly if you're using a craft knife, which is not the sharpest. So that sits on the front there, and then there will obviously be another piece of pattern paper which you could add on now if you wanted, which will be the same size to go in this section. I'm going to flip the piece over to mark on the reverse, and we're going to mark 3 sides, which is going to be 1/2 inch from the outer score lines of this rectangle, and then it will have a score line across the bottom. Make sure that your 1/2 inch tab is over on the right hand side, and I'm going to line my ruler up with the 5 1/4 inch track on my scoreboard. Make sure your ruler is running vertically, and draw a pencil line between 1 1/2 inches and 5 inches. I'm going to move my ruler along to 7 3/4 of an inch across the top, and again mark between 1 1/2 and 5. Rotate, join up the top 2 pencil lines. Now obviously if you're confident with your craft knife, you can just put your craft knife in the track and using your ruler as a guide and cut the lines, rather than going in with a pencil and then cutting. And then I'm going to score between the 2 pencil lines at the other end. Now I'm going to cut that away towards the end of preparing this piece because I don't want the door flapping in and out. Start by folding and burnishing along all of the score lines. Take your scissors. I've got the 1/2 inch tab over on the left hand side. We're going to cut up each of the vertical score lines to the long horizontal. This is creating the base tabs for the box, like so. Rotate to the long side. I'm going to cut away this rectangle and cut a wedge away from the right hand side of the 1/2 inch glue tab in front of me, just to shape that at the same time. Rotate the piece, so we're now working at this end. I'm going to ignore the first score line on the right hand side and move along to the second vertical and cut down, and you want to cut this as straight as you can because this is going to be our lid flap, as it were. So cut straight down this one, move along to the next vertical and cut down this one, and now we're going to cut along this long score line and we're going to completely remove this section and this section and this section here, so we're only going to be left with this piece here. I'm going to take a wedge from the end of this glue tab, and then I'm going to just cut a notch into this piece here using my circle punch. Now we want to cut around the pencil lines for the door. So that's my door cut, and I'm just going to bend that forward and just burnish that gently. So this element is now done, and what we want to do before we glue it together to create the box is create the pocket, which is going to sit on the inside of the door, and also the additional section which I've added so that when the door is opened you only access the gift card rather than the rest of the contents which are inside the box. And that of course is optional. You might not want, you might be happy for the recipient to be able to access the gift card from the door and also be able to access the other contents using this door at the same time. So for the pocket for the gift card, and this is based on one of these credit card sized gift cards, I have a piece which is 3 1/4 times 3 3/8. Have the piece in the scoreboard so that the 3 3/8 of an inch section is running along the top, and score at 1/2 inch. Rotate 180 degrees and score at 1/2 inch. And then rotate it 90 degrees, so we're now working on the 3 1/4 inch side, and score at 1/2 inch. So we'll have 1/2 inch score lines on 3 sides. Fold and burnish. Now you obviously might not want this style of pocket, you may want to create something more fancy, you might want to add a mini envelope, that's entirely your choice. Just remember you're working within the confines of this measurement here. So I'm just going to cut diagonally across the bottom just to add and shape these side glue tabs. So I'm just taking this bottom left hand corner off. Do the same on this side. I'm going to shape the tops here and here, and we'll now add glue or tape onto the 3 sides, and the pocket will fit inside the door like so. So I'm going to use my construction glue. So line the base of the pocket up against the score line of the door. So that's adhered. I've obviously veered off slightly when I've scored because you can see I've got a bigger gap. So that's the pocket for the gift card stuck within the door. We're now going to make the barrier between the gift card and the contents within the box. And for this you'll need a piece which is 3 5/8 by 4 5/8, and on all 4 sides score at 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. Fold and burnish along the score lines, and we're going to burnish so that the inside what is the 1/2 inch score line is going to be a mounting fold, and then the 1/4 of an inch score line is going to be a valley fold. So each section is going to look like this. And now we're going to completely remove the 4 squares within each corner. Bring in our piece. This is going to sit in this format, and it's going to sit in place like so. Now, if you want to cover the inside with pattern paper, you can do that. You might want to put an additional message in this section. You will be able to do that once the piece is constructed and in its box format. Now, it might be easier for you to see where you're sticking by moving the door out of the way, but you can see if I flip the piece over, when we stick the piece into place, it's going to sit within the section like so. I'm going to use my quick grab glue. You're going to add the glue to the outer 1/4 of an inch sections. And as I said, this piece is optional. You might not want this piece at all. So I'm going to just hold it up so I can see that my 1/4 of an inch score lines are going to be within the frame rather than inside the aperture. So if you do the top and the bottom first, your left and right should fall into the right place. So that's going to sit on there. So if you flip the piece over, you can see we've got this section in here. So when we do open the door, the gifts are going to be concealed. So we can now glue this together as we would any other box. So we'll add glue onto this glue tab, join up the box sides like so. Now we can fold in the 2 side tabs like so, fold down the back, and then the front tab will come down last, and that will be our box, the base of our box secured into place. So that's going to come across like so. Square the box up at the same time and then add glue across the bottom and stick this into place. So that is our box. So the next thing we're going to do is make the additional lid. We're now going to create the lid of the box, and I'll show you the method I'm using, but you might want to create yours a slightly different shape. You might not want an arch, you might want something different, but if you watch the process then you can see where we're going. I'm starting with a circle which is 3 5/8 in diameter. The width of my box is 3.5 inches, so I'm going to just lay my ruler on, and once my ruler gets to the 3.5 inch mark, I'm going to mark with a pencil, and I'm going to cut along the pencil line. So this is going to be the front face of my lid. So I now want to create the back face, but I also want to incorporate a hinge. So once again, I'm going to lay my ruler on, and when I get to 3.5 inches, i.e. the width of the base of the box, I'm going to make a pencil line. Now I want to incorporate into this piece my hinge. I'm going to take my trimmer and I'm going to cut 1/2 inch away from the pencil line, like so. Bring in your scoreboard. I'm going to line the pencil line up with a track. Make sure it is lined up straight and score. Like so. And then shape the ends of that glue tab. This is the hinge for the lid in the box. The next thing we want to do is work out the length of the strip that we need to add the front and the back together. You need to measure each of yours separately. Don't necessarily assume that yours is going to be the same as mine, because you might have chosen a more arch look. You might have changed the look of the curve of your lid if you've chosen to have a curve. So I'm going to start with the edge here up against the corner of the scoreboard, and I'm going to roll the piece along the top until I get to the other end, and that is just slightly over 4.5 inches. I've cut my strip to just over 4.5 inches times 2 1/4, and I'm going to score at 1/2 and 1 3/4. Fold and burnish the score lines. I'm going to add a curve into this because it does make it easier when it comes to gluing. And now I'm going to cut a series of teeth within the 1/2 inch glue tabs at either side. So this will just help us adhere this piece into the right shape to join the front and back of the lid together. I'm just gluing the teeth and manipulating the strip around the curve of what will be the front panel. Just burnish that down with my fingers. And now I'm going to do the same on this side. Obviously we're working from the score line, not from the actual edge of the card, because this has got the extra 1/2 inch on it for the hinge. So that's the lid of the box, and now I'm going to bring in the base, open the flap, and I'm going to add glue to the back of the hinge on the lid, and then that is going to sit down inside the back of the box. So I'm going to hold that in place like so, burnish that with my fingers, make sure everything's lined up. This is the lid now in place, and I'm going to continue with the rest of the decorations. Here's the finished decorated piece. I've added a strip across the top, which was 1, and I started at 4.5 inches and then cut that down to the required length. The front and back panels I've covered in entire circles because it was easier than trying to get the look of the border around the edges. I have added a strap onto the top section with a brad, and then this runs through a bar at the front that I've created, which keeps the lid down and will keep the door closed. And you can use the bar to open the door if necessary. I did earlier on in the process cut away this top corner section. I would cut that nearer to the top corner because you can just slightly see the gift card through there, and you might only want this top section cut away if you don't use this type of closure. And then we have the gift card in its wallet inside. But overall, I'm really pleased with how the box has come out. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. And until next time, thanks for watching.